In Lesson 7, we learned how to add modifiers to our clauses for additional detail, keeping in mind how our choices impact our reader. In Lesson 8, we'll learn how to avoid some common modifier errors. The first common error, wordiness, is usually a result of too many prepositional phrases. When our sentences are too wordy, they can become very confusing for our readers. They'll have a hard time finding the sentence's main subject and action amidst all those phrases. Look at this example. It is a matter of the gravest possible importance to the health of anyone with a history of a problem with disease of the heart that he or she should avoid the sort of foods with a high percentage of saturated fats. There are 10 prepositional phrases in this sentence. Using this many makes the sentence wordy, redundant, and confusing. To eliminate wordiness, first identify the subjects and verbs of your clauses. If we look at our example sentence, the subject and verb in the first clause is it is. In the second clause, it's he or she should avoid. But we have to ask, are these really the main subjects and verbs we want to use to express our most important or most central ideas? It seems that instead of the subject it, we really want to focus on anyone. And if we closely read our sentence, we also notice that other keywords we should keep involve heart disease, as well as avoid, and saturated fat. Now that we have the key words and our main subject, let's reassemble them into a simpler, less wordy or confusing sentence. Stripped down to just those key elements, we get, anyone with a history of heart disease should avoid saturated fats. Notice that we have our actual subject, anyone, in the subject position. It's tied to a clear verb, should avoid, and we've only used 2 prepositional phrases, with a history and of heart disease. Compare it to the original sentence. Our new one is much simpler, and yet it expresses the same idea, just in a clearer way without all those extra prepositional phrases. Another common error is incorrectly punctuating with transitional words and phrases. Transitions can be placed in different spots in a sentence, at the beginning, at the end, or even in the middle. Varying the location of transitions is good because it is yet another way to diversify the rhythm of our sentences, but we have to be sure to punctuate properly depending on the transition's location. Each location has a different punctuation rule. To avoid using commas and transitions incorrectly, we have to remember that transitions are not the same as coordinating conjunctions. Students often think that transitions act the same as coordinating conjunctions, but they don't. Let's look at this example sentence. The test revealed malignant tumor cells, so the attending physician scheduled the patient for surgery. Here, we have correctly joined one independent clause with another independent clause with a comma and coordinating conjunction. But look what happens if we put a transition like therefore in place of the coordinating conjunction. Because the transitional word does not have the same power to join 2 independent clauses that a coordinating conjunction does, we've created a spliced sentence, 2 independent clauses joined incorrectly with only a comma. Students also confuse transitions with subordinating conjunctions, but once again, they aren't the same. Here is another sentence, this time made up of an independent clause and a dependent clause joined with a subordinating conjunction because. If we replace that subordinating conjunction with the transition therefore, once again, we have an incorrect run-on sentence because the 2 clauses are incorrectly joined. Instead, transitions require a punctuation sandwich. If the transition word or phrase comes at the beginning of the clause, a period should precede it and a comma should follow it. Since semicolons and periods are grammatically closely related, we could also precede a transition with a semicolon and follow it with a comma. Or we could even embed the transition further in the clause. This option is yet another one that allows us to diversify the rhythm or tempo of our sentence. Just remember that we must still sandwich the transition word or phrase with punctuation. In this case, because it doesn't come at the beginning of the sentence, a comma precedes and follows it. In Lesson 8, we learned how to avoid common modifier errors. First, we discussed eliminating wordiness from too many prepositional phrases by identifying key words and revising to a simpler form. Then we talked about avoiding comma errors by remembering that transitions are not the same as coordinating or subordinating conjunctions, and by learning how to properly punctuate transitions with a punctuation sandwich. Now is your chance to experiment with these concepts. Please return to the Canvas module and reopen the Activity 5 document. Use what we learned in this lesson to check for any modifier errors and correct any you find. Remember to save your work because you'll be submitting this at the end of the module. When you have finished Activity 6, you will have completed the workshop, The Basics of Rhetorical Grammar. In this workshop, we discussed how to recognize, combine, and correctly compose with independent clauses and dependent clauses, as well as how to correctly and strategically compose with modifiers. And ultimately, we learned how to think about grammar rhetorically, that is, how we can use all of these elements to best convey our ideas to our readers, how to make more strategic choices in our writing so that we can not only write a grammatically correct paper, but even more importantly, a paper that impacts our reader through each and every clause, word, and comma. Now, please return to the module and advance to the next page to take a diagnostic quiz, testing the grammar concepts we've learned here and more. For more free assistance with your writing, visit us online or make an appointment at any of our convenient locations. Or you can watch another video, download a handout, send us an email, or give us a call. Thanks for watching!